Hey everybody, so I'm going to be looking over here a little bit as well as to you because we've got the live feed going on over here, which is what Alyssa's going to be talking to me through on YouTube. And then as soon as this video posts, I'm going to delete that video. So just letting you know I might be looking at two different things. So to get started, I want to review a little bit of the basics exercises and that kind of stuff that we've done up to this point. Just to kind of get the brains going a little bit and to review some of the concepts that we'll be talking about in the rest of it. Yeah, so let's do that a little bit. Let's pull up the basic exercise sheet. If I can find it. There we go. And I'm just going to run us down these exercises. I also did this in the, did some review in the snare tenor video from last week. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but there's going to be times that I want to reference y'all to that video. So the first part of last week's video for the snares and tenors, I also want you all to watch so that everybody's getting the same information. It's a review of some other stuff, and it applies to basic strokes and all that stuff. So in their review video, we did mainly the timing exercises. In this one, we're going to do the West Springfield basic exercise sheet. So after you've watched this portion that covers the basic exercise sheet, I want you to stop the video and watch the snares and tenors rehearsal number 1 all the way through the West Springfield flams breakdown. Once we stop the flams breakdown in that other video, I want you to then come back to this video and start when we do the basic strokes breakdown. Because the WSHS flams exercise is the same on snare, tenor, and bass. So to save a little bit of time and so I can cover more material with you all, I'm just referencing that other video. So let's do the basic exercise sheet. And then I'll tell you to pause the video and go to the other thing, and then we'll go from there. So let's play the basic exercise sheet down. Letter A. Do this one at 90 beats a minute. We'll do this whole page at 90. A. Last time. Okay, so on that one, don't play it any louder than you can play all the notes at the same volume. So if you're trying to play it really loud and you hear that you're getting a kind of sound quality, then play that first stroke softer until you can make all the notes the same. Okay, now B, gallop, same tempo. Last time. Okay. And, you know, as I've said before, please play along with me while you're watching the video. Or if you do not play along with me watching the video, later on you need to play along with me watching the video. So if you just want to watch through and just kind of jot down some notes and whatever, then don't just leave it at that. Go back and then try to play along with me as you reference your notes, or, you know, whatever your process is. But you should not get to a point where at the end of the summer you haven't actually played through all of the notes with me during these videos. Okay, so letter C. Actually, let's do 8 on a hand real quick. I don't know why I didn't put that on the sheet. I'm an idiot. Last time. All right. Now let's do basic exercise C. Last time. Okay. And, you know, if you are doing this at home, please try to act as if you would in an actual rehearsal. So continue to try to be as still as possible. When you come up, be, you know, have your hands there on the count and hold yourself accountable to that stuff. I think, you know, y'all are definitely at the level where you can do that. Another thing that you might want to do is set a computer up, and hopefully you're practicing in front of a mirror. So have the computer and then the mirror, so that as you're playing, you can look and see both kind of at the same time and make sure that you're moving with me. That might be, you know, a viable thing that you could do. So let's do D. Last time. All right, so yeah, on these things like letter D, where you've got an upstroke finally, you just want to make sure that on the taps preceding that upstroke that you're only turning your wrist. A lot of people, when they add that element of lifting the hand for the accent after taps, tend to pump the taps, so that when they do the upstroke, they're already kind of in that like army hand going up and down thing. But it should be totally different ideas. You hit the accent, you turn the wrist only for the taps, and then that last tap you lift the hand afterwards. So the tap should always be played only by the wrist, not by a lift of the hand. E. And remember, on E, we're just going to do one hand at a time. Okay, so don't take the repeat and shift over to the left, just end with the right, and then we'll come up, play it off the left, and end with the left. Okay. So another thing you want to make sure you're keeping in mind, and you might want to write this down if you haven't already, is make sure you're practicing with your heels together. Don't practice with your feet apart and kind of do this whole thing, right? I'm sure you're noticing there's already enough sway in the motion, even with the feet together. So if you have your feet apart, it's just going to look really funky, and you don't want to look really funky. Unless you mean funky in a good way, like, man, that was funky. In which case, great, but not like, ooh, that was funky. They were funky looking. So anyway, let's do letter F. This time you do it as written, of course, but without the repeat. So you will shift hands halfway through the line. Get that quarter note lift of the hand exchange. Lift. Lift. Last time. Cool. Now let's do letter G. I'm going to start it on the right, and then after the 8 in between, I'm going to start it on the left, and just go back and forth each time I play it. The important thing to remember about this one is, just like you've been a quarter note prep, doing that the whole time, hopefully, you do that with this one as well, but both hands start to lift. And the hand that you start with just leads the other one ever so slightly. This is the main thing to remember. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right? If you're starting with the right hand, and then if you're starting with the left hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So you're kind of lifting through that count with the lead hand ever so slightly ahead of the other. That's the main purpose of this one, and ensuring that once you start playing, you have the same approach as like an 8 on a hand, where the hand stays down and the beads turn back. So you want to get the same sound from both hands as well. So not a or right. You want to get da 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 da. Excuse me. So on this lift, don't make it so big that you can't play all the notes at that level. So use a quarter note prep, but you might only play it this high. 4, digga, digga, digga. So even though it's like a big looking motion, I think some of you tend to just overdo this lift. So use that quarter, but don't go up too high. Down, down. Left. Don't accent the release. All the same level, right? Left. Last time. Okay, and we're going to skip H. Had we done more in-person rehearsals, we probably would have done that one a little bit more, but that's okay. I feel comfortable using the time that we would have spent breaking that down more in other things to kind of gear you guys up for the fall. So, Alyssa, everything good to this point? Got any questions? Anything I need to go back and do? Anything like that? Looks like we have somebody else in the chat as well. I don't know who it is, but if you want to chime in, you're more than welcome. Okay, so just to now that we're at this point, we just did the basic exercise sheet. Listen to this explanation and then pause the video and do what I'm about to tell you to do. So after this explanation, I want you to pause the video and go to last week's snare tenor exercise rehearsal. And I want you to do that entire video all the way up until the point that I start working on basic strokes with the snares and tenors. The reason being, it covers some timing aspects that you're going to need for the basic strokes thing, but it also it reviews a lot of timing, and the flams exercise is the same music for snares, tenors, and basses. It's all exactly the same. There's no difference. So everything that I say in the snare tenor exercise about the WSHS flams is exactly the same for y'all. Yeah, pause the video now, and after you've done that, come back and start watching again at this point. Okay, so Alyssa, I trust that you're still with me and that you're not leaving this to go watch the other video. I think you're good on timing pretty much, so we should be able to be productive with this time today with you watching live. Is that good? Can you respond if you're still here? So now that you've gone back and watched the snare tenor video and you've brushed up on your timing and all of that, some of you might not still be able to do some of that timing stuff, in which case you're going to want to reference this video later on when you do master some of those timing concepts. There's a technique or a characteristic of learning called scaffolding. So those of you that know what a scaffold is, it's like a structure that you build in order to work on like a construction project or something like that. And basically it just means that like there's a structure to it and it's built on levels and it's an organized fashion. So it's important in scaffolding for me to tell you kind of what your end goal is with a basic concept. So the basic concept is first, the motions and the technique and everything, and then the timing aspects of 8th, triplet, 16th stuff. And then the ultimate kind of scaffold for this year is the basic strokes exercise, as well as the triplet diddle and all of that. That's going to really challenge your awareness and knowledge of time and those timing exercises, where the beat is and what hand you're playing on for certain parts of the beat. So if you can't do that timing stuff, then you can't even approach basic exercise and the triplet exercise as well. So for I typically view the bass section as like you're working for at least a year on just developing your ability to control your hands in relation to your feet and timing rhythms, and your technique and your basic understanding of rudiments. That's why a lot of the stuff that I write is just based around all that stuff. And then that scaffolds you to kind of take the next layer of the scaffold and approach more rudiment patterns and stuff, and kind of leaving those rules that we establish. And then that, of course, scaffolds you into like professional level playing and doing that kind of stuff, going to being a university drumline and all that. So the whole program is just kind of set up to scaffold you all the way up to being able to just completely throw down on the drum. So now that you've watched the flam breakdown and those timing exercises, we're ready to tackle this basic strokes thing. So I think we're only about 20 minutes in. Since you've had to take time to go watch those other things, I'm going to try to end early today, so that it's not like, hey, go watch an hour of this video and then, oh yeah, you still have an hour and a half to do this one. So, you know, I might try to finish this thing up in about 40 minutes. But you know, we'll spend kind of as long as we need to. And if you do watch all of the snare tenor video, then you'll notice that I don't make it all of the way through basic strokes with them. So it is very likely that we will cover just some basic concepts about the exercise, run through a couple little things here and there for me to point out to you, things to look at, and then I'm going to play through the exercise a few times to give you something to play along to at the very end, so that after you work some of this stuff out on an individual level, then at the very end of the video you can easily scroll to the end and kind of click and play along with me, to use that as a resource. Good. We've still got Alyssa and whoever else is in the chat. I'm not sure. So, basic strokes. If you'll look, it'll be more obvious if you look at the snare and tenor part. A is just an accent every 8 notes. And then B is an accent every 7 notes. C is an accent every 6 notes, so on and so forth. So 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 built back up. But when you build it back up, instead of all those notes being on the same hand and all those notes being on the same hand, it does the inverted sticking. So it kind of is like basic exercise, what is it, C? Yeah, it's like the concepts of basic exercise sheet letter C and basic exercise sheet letter D, but just on steroids, timing wise. So for you guys, I made it a timing exercise, and we'll also kind of talk some motion with it. So I think that we can all probably approach the first line today, you know, with pretty good success. So let's look at A. Yeah. Let's do that. We'll back it down to 80 beats a minute. And 5, 6, 7, 8. Again. Okay, so basically each line you'll play, or each letter number, each letter you'll play 8 accents. So you'll do 4 accents on a hand, however you want to think about it. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you go to the next letter. So that's, you know, pretty basic. All of you should be able to do that one, no problem, really. So you want to apply the same concepts that we did on the basic exercise sheet to this one. So lift the non-playing hand a quarter note ahead of, you know, where you want to play. So it'll be down, tap, lift, lift, down, tap, lift, lift, down, tap, lift, lift, down, tap, lift, lift. Okay. So try and get those mechanics happening. I know that to this point on the timing exercises, I've told you all not to really worry about the motion as much. That's what we will be focused on in the fall, is getting all of your hands to start or initiate the motion at the same time. and all of that so that you're looking the same as you play this. But for now, if the motion of this thing is too much, don't worry about it. We just need to get the accents, the taps, and the sticking in relation to our feet. Okay, so let's skip B for now. Go to C. So now you're going to accent every third note on this one. Eight notes per line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, so timing wise with the lift, if you're to that point where you can work that out, you would play the accent and then immediately start lifting the non-playing hand on the next tap. So 1, lift, lift, 1, lift, lift, 1, lift, lift, 1, lift, lift. Okay, so that's how that goes. Skipping D, we're going to go to E. On this one, it'll be a continuous lift the whole time. So as soon as you get done playing, start lifting that other hand as the next hand starts. Okay, so to slow that down a little bit, you got down, as you play the accent, the other hand lifts. So lift down, tap, lift down, tap, lift down, tap, lift down, tap, or down lift, tap, down lift, tap, down lift, tap, down lift, tap. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So the accent on one hand is what, like kind of a trampoline, like when you land and it bounces somebody else up. That's kind of what should be happening in the hand. Right? Okay, so that's the concept behind E. So now let's skip F and we'll go to G. This one, once you arrive at G, your hands should just rebound out the whole time. So make sure you're not downstroking anything and going like that. Once you're at G, it'll... Okay, so let's start this one with our hands in the up position. G. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, so now the next bar is the same thing. Uh-oh. Looks like something weird's going on with the live feed. Alyssa, are you still here? Are you getting this weirdness? Alyssa, is everything okay on your end? Is it that you can hear me, but you can't see me? I'm just going to try to refresh it here on my phone. Maybe it's okay. Okay, good. My phone was just being weird. Okay, so H and I, well, H is the same as G. in terms of approach. So it's just you're playing 16ths instead of 8ths. So continue to rebound all through that. So let's do G and H together. One, three, 1, 2, ready, play. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1. Okay. So you'll see in I say downstrokes, and the inflections change from accents to tenutos. So those straight lines over the notes, over the stems, are called tenutos. And it means one thing in our language for marching percussion, but it means something else in like wind literature and maybe timpani and some things like that, where you discuss actual note lengths. But for our purposes, what it means is that it's not a tap, which is down low, and it's not an accent either. It's exactly halfway height-wise between both. So if you've been playing your taps real low and your accents all the way up, then the tenuto is halfway between those. And it says downstrokes. So the thought here is that even though you're playing half height, that the sound will continue to be the same. And to achieve that, you'll play with a faster stick motion than you typically would play at a medium, but you will control the stick down in between. So H and I together go like this. Hey, I'll play that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you hear how it kind of sounds more or less the same, but it looks totally different. So the idea being that for the rest of the exercise, there are no accents, there are only tenutos. And the sticking of the rhythms should cause that faster stick to happen because it's an inverted motion. I might change this for you all because that's not necessarily the case for the bass part. In fact, let's just make an executive decision now. Forget everything that I just said about rebounding and then downstroke. Change all of these tenutos to full-on accents. And the reason being that the snares and tenors are playing 16th note patterns, so when they've got that quick motion causes that lower stick height to be louder. But because y'all are playing 8th notes, where that's not necessarily the case when you have that much space between those notes and to do that inverted motion. So don't do the downstroke thing, change all the tenutos to accents, and there we go. Cool. I was looking forward to breaking this down in person because I don't actually know the bass part that I wrote for this. So let us do letter J together, and then we'll put I and J, then we'll put H through J together. So let's do J. J is the same as G. Alright, everybody good on that? I hope so. Let's do H through J. Do it a couple times. H through J. Okay, so Alyssa, are there any questions about that? While you're answering, I'm going to push forward and I'll refer back to you in a second. Now let's look at L. So L is just like E, except for it has that inverted motion. So just like on the basic exercise sheet, C and D are basically the same, but the sticking is different. It's the same thing on here. E is the same as L, except L has that inverted sticking. So let's do L. So you got right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right. Okay. And that's why we don't really need to talk about motion in terms of timing as much, because in the rest of the exercise, there's no quarter note lift. You just start lifting after the tap that precedes the accent. Right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right. All right. So moving right along, let's skip M and let's go to N. So same thing, you just accent every 3. This one is very similar to letter C, except as we've said, this is with the inverted motion. So let's do N. Okay, and now letter P. Yeah, you just accent every 4 notes. Lift, 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 lift. All right. So if I were you all, what I would do is I would work this in this order. I would make sure I could play A really well. And in this whole thing, when you play these taps, only the hand moves, not the whole arm. So just like we talked about in the exercise sheet, that applies here. On the taps, you want to just turn the wrist, move the hand, but not move the hand up and down. You don't want to pump on the taps. So I would work on A, and then work P, right? And then I would work C, and then N, and then I would work E and L, and then G and H, or G and J are the same, and then H and I are the same. All right, so once you've got all of those, then I think all of you can work on those in the meantime without having to master as much of the 16th note timing stuff. So, you know, if you're not able to play the 16th note timing sheet down, then you might want to pause the video and write down somewhere, make a note somewhere to come back to this video, to this point, maybe write down the timestamp or whatever. And once you've figured out the 16th note timing patterns, then come back to this point in the video. Okay, so I'm going to take a swig of coffee. Maybe it will help me play some of this stuff, because this is about to trip me out a little bit. So the long and the short of this next little thing that we're about to do is it's just going to take time and breaking it down per count. So there's not really like a get rich quick scheme on the letters in between the stuff that we just worked on. You're just going to have to learn the patterns and the order of them and all that stuff. But basically, what's happening concept-wise is the hand that plays the accent is playing eighth notes until the next hand comes in. And then when the next hand comes in, it's playing also eighth notes. So the eighth notes are either occurring on the downbeat or the upbeat, or the left hand is playing eighth notes starting with the E of the count or the of the count. And that's what makes it kind of interesting, is to get those E's and U's happening and to try to line up the motion as well eventually. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to break down probably B and D. And then I'm going to try to break down O and M. So we might go over just a little bit on what I said we would do for time, but we'll try to get through it as quickly as possible while still giving you, fighting chance to get this stuff. So, yeah, let's break down B. So let's do the first two counts of B. 1 and 2 and Okay? And we'll slow this one down to like maybe 60. Two counts at B. One, two, ready, play. 1, 2, ready, play. Last time. Okay, we're not going to do that last time stuff. So as we do these repetitions of short chunks, leave the hands in playing position, keep marking time all the way through, and that way we can kind of take it a little bit faster. So now let's do the first 4 counts of B. And if it throws you for a loop after you try it a few times, you might just need to play counts 3 and 4. So actually, let's just go ahead and do that. Let's play counts 3 and 4 of B. Two, ready, play. E, E, and 1, 2, ready, play. And add that soft note to release. E, and 1 with the right hand. Left, 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 right, right. Left, 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 right, right. Okay? So now let's put the first bar of B together. Okay. Now take the next 2 counts, 1 and 2, E, 2, ready, play. Okay. Now let's add 1 count to what we just did. So we're playing the first 3 of the second bar of B. 1, 2, ready, play. 1 and 2, E, 4. Okay, so the reason that we're stopping on beat 4 is now that same pattern starts again, and it's just starts on the right foot. So everything that we just played, we're going to put it all together in a second, but we just worked 7 counts of that line. The next 7 counts is exactly the same as the first 7 counts. You're just doing it starting with the right foot. Okay, so in order to practice this, what you might want to do is break down that first 7 counts like we just did off the left foot, and then don't even think about it the way that it's written on the sheet. Just practice the first 7 counts, but when you get the 4 from the Met, start marking time with the right foot, right? So that kind of seems like 1, and work those 7 counts starting on the right foot. Okay, at that point you're ready to try to put them both together so that it goes 7 counts into 7 counts, and then you're done with that letter. Okay, so let's do the first 7 counts of B off the left foot. Now, let's do that same exact thing, but instead of starting the mark time on the left foot, start it on the right foot. Right, left, right, left. 1, 2, right, left. So now let's break down D real quickly. I'm going to go through this a little faster because what we just did is kind of how you should go about breaking down all the other lines that you haven't figured out yet. So you want to take it either 1 count at a time or 2 counts at a time or maybe 3, and then just kind of chunk it together and make the chunks a little bigger. So yeah, we'll do that really quickly with D. I'm not going to go into a lot of explanation on this, but I'm just going to show you the sequence that you should kind of use to put these together. Let's do D. Do the first 2 counts of D. 1, 3. Okay, now do counts 3 and 4 of D. 1, 2, ready, play. E and 2, 2, E and 4 and up. Okay, now add 1 count to that. So you'll do E and 4 and E, 2. 1, 2, ready, play. 1, 2, ready, play. 1, 2, ready, play. All right. So now let's put the first 5 counts together of D. So that first bar and 1 count, and stop on beat 2 of the second bar. 1, 2, ready, play. 1, 2, ready, play. 1, 2, ready, play. Alright, so then you would do the same thing as we did with B. Start the mark time on the right foot, work those same 5 counts out, do that a couple times, make sure you're good on it, and then you want to put both together. So I'm going to play the whole line of D. Two, ready, play. Okay, so that was those 2. Now let's look at O. All right, so if you're comparing O to B, aside from the inverted sticking, we're simply taking out the note that precedes the accent. So it's the same rhythmic structure, you're just subtracting one of those notes. So instead of right, it's D, right? We're removing that one note and we're just making the sticking inverted. So hopefully that helps you from a sticking and rhythmic standpoint. So let's play the first 2 counts at O. And again, we're going to go through this real quick because I've kind of demonstrated the process. So there we go. 1, 2, first 2 counts. Okay. Now let's do the second 2 counts. So counts 3 and 4. Left, left, right, left. Right, 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 left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, 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 left. Okay. So now let's play the first 2 counts of the second bar. Left, 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 right. Okay, and then play the first 3 counts of that second bar. So we're just adding 1 count. Left, 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 right, right, right. Left, 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 right, right, right. Alright, so now once you can do that, play the first 7 counts of O. Let's try it. Right, left, 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 right, 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 left, 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 right, right, right. Okay, then you would do that, but start on the right foot instead of the left foot, and then you would put both of those together. So I'm going to play the whole line of O. And then motion-wise, what you want to do is start that upstroke as soon as the preceding tap is done. So right, left, lift, left, right, lift, right, left, left. You know what I mean? So now let's do the same thing to letter M. And then I'll be ready to try to play this whole thing down a couple of times for y'all as a practice resource. So let's look at M real quick. Let's do the first 2 counts of M. One and E, right, left, left, right. Try and close out whatever you're watching, Alyssa, and come back into it and see if it's good, because I'm seeing everything. Yeah, it looks good to me. So. Yeah, it looks good to me. So. All right. So we'll continue. Let's do the second 2 counts of M. So counts 3 and 4 of the first bar of M. I just did 3 counts. Okay, then you would add the next count. So let's do that once. 2, 3, 4. E, 1. Okay. I think I messed the sticking up there. But anyway, let's do the first 5 counts of M all together. One, two, ready, go. Right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right. So hopefully this is starting to kind of make sense with you in terms of the sticking. It's not natural sticking, so it's a deviation of the sticking that you've learned for these rhythms. But motion-wise is the important thing. So you've got an accent, and then the next thing is the other hand, and then the last tap is the upstroke into the accent, so on and so forth. So it's a little different, but hopefully it kind of makes sense. So now I'll take the whole line at M. Ready, play. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break, mainly a brain break, just because I'm about to play through this and I've never done that on the bass part. So just take a couple minutes, maybe do whatever you want to do, and I'll be back to try to play all of this stuff through. I don't know if y'all could hear it, but halfway through that last line, they turned on the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse up there, so it was just really distracting. Okay. Let me look at some trouble spots here for me. Yeah, so motion-wise, what I actually want y'all to do is, in the first half of the exercise, as soon as that hand is done playing, you play the last note. As soon as the other hand starts to play, then start lifting for that next accent. So this first line. Right. So as the patterns progress, you'll have less and less time to do that lift. So that, you know, in letter F, you're right. Ensuring that your taps stay soft the whole time. And in the second half of the exercise, the same thing, except it's the same every line, is you're immediately lifting after the last tap on a hand. On like M, right? Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so I'm going to try to play this whole thing down. I'm going to do it at 60 beats a minute, and then 70 beats a minute and 80 beats a minute. And if I feel good at that point, then maybe I'll try 90 beats a minute. So, yeah, Alyssa, if you've got somewhere else to be or something to do, don't feel like you have to watch this live. But if you're ready to play along and all that, by all means, do so. But there's not really going to be any interaction with the chat from this point forward. I'm just going to be playing down the exercise. So, okay, let's try it. I got to do the last page by memory. So. Yeah, so obviously I need to work out the, let's say on line K, on letter K, you'll start downstroking those. So in J, you complete rebound. On K, downstroke. Alright, so we'll say that. Now let's bump it up, see if I can play it a little faster. My mind is on overload right now. This is not an easy thing. Yeah. So on M, quick thing, you just have one tap in between the accents. So that's one way to think about it. One, 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 one. Right, and then in O, M-N-O. O would be two taps between the accents. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Right, but you need to make sure that you can do it according to the beat, like E, and all that, because we will probably be breaking this stuff down once we get in person, because, we'll just need to do that once we're all together. But the more prepared that you can be to just run this down without any issue, the better. Obviously, the more fun you're going to have in the rehearsal. And as I was telling the snares and the tenors, typically there's always one person in each section, at least, that just doesn't have it. And everybody else does. And those rehearsals are not fun because we're having to slow everything down to get one person caught up when everybody else took time of their own to figure it out and make it happen. So please just don't be that one person that goes to rehearsal and is unprepared. Show up ready to go, and then if everybody actually does that and we have faith in each other that we're going to show up prepared, then we could show up, be relaxed, get a lot done, and have a lot of fun. But if somebody shows up unprepared, then it's like, okay, let's turn the metronome back. Let's take 2 counts at a time. Let's take 3 counts. So the more that you can do this stuff on your own, we're going to have a lot more fun in group rehearsal. And Alyssa really knows what I'm talking about. It's very frustrating when people don't show up. So, bump it up to 80. Let's try it. Okay, I'm going to keep bumping this up. I'm going to try to do 90 and 100. You don't have to do this, but we should at least be prepared to play it all the way through at 80 beats a minute without any obvious errors by the end of the summer. Let's go, 90 beats a minute. And one more. This is fun. The faster it gets, it's a little funky. That's the good kind of funky. Sweet. Awesome. Well, I hope you guys got something out of it. We did end 10 minutes early, but that last stuff you probably didn't attempt anyway. So yeah, I hope that you guys remember to come back and rehearse some of this stuff to those examples in the future once you've figured out some of these patterns and how they line up with the feet and the sticking and all that stuff. So this was fun. I didn't know this exercise before we started, but I'm pretty close to having it memorized. It's all just patterns. So I hope you're all doing well, and don't forget to let me know once you've watched this video. Bye.